Lisa knelt beside Professor Ketfer and placed her hands gently on his chest. The Zephyrian's skin felt cool and smooth, like polished stone. She could feel both of his hearts beating beneath her palms, but the rhythm was all wrong. The primary heart was fluttering weakly, while the secondary heart was working too hard to compensate. "What are you doing?" Dr. Velthara asked, her voice sharp with concern. "I am listening," Lisa said simply. She closed her eyes and focused on what her hands were telling her. This was something she had learned in her first year of medical school on Earth. Sometimes the most important information came not from machines, but from touch. The other professors and students watched nervously as Lisa moved her hands across the professor's chest. To them, it looked like she was just touching him randomly, but Lisa was mapping his cardiovascular system with her fingers. She could feel the location of both hearts, the major blood vessels, and the subtle vibrations that told her how blood was flowing through his body. "His hearts are not synchronized," Lisa said, opening her eyes. "The primary heart is beating irregularly, and the secondary heart is trying to keep up. But that is not the main problem." "Then what is the main problem?" Dr. Velthar demanded. Lisa pointed to the small mark she had noticed earlier on the professor's chest. "I think something hit him right here, at exactly the wrong moment in his cardiac cycle. In humans, we call this condition commotio cordis. It happens when the chest is struck during a specific phase of the heartbeat." "That is impossible," said Professor Zendal. "A simple impact could not cause this kind of damage to a Zephyrian heart." "Maybe not to one heart," Lisa said. "But what if the impact happened when both hearts were in their vulnerable phase? What if it disrupted the electrical signals that keep them working together?" Dr. Velthar looked at the emergency scanner readings again. "The electrical activity is certainly abnormal, but our equipment shows no signs of physical trauma." "Your equipment is looking for major damage," Lisa explained. "This will be very subtle." The impact did not break anything. It just confused the heart's timing. As if to prove her point, Professor Keffer's body suddenly convulsed. His primary heart stopped beating entirely for several seconds, leaving only the secondary heart to pump blood. The emergency scanner began beeping frantically. "Primary heart has stopped," announced Riksdahl. His voice filled with panic. Lisa watched as the professor's skin became even paler. Without his primary heart working, his secondary heart was trying to do the job of both, but it was not designed for that kind of stress. "Your scanners are telling you what is happening," Lisa said urgently, "but they cannot tell you how to fix it. In human medicine, when someone has commotio cordis, we use physical intervention to restart the heart's normal rhythm." "Physical intervention?" Dr. Velthara looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Chest compressions," Lisa said. "We press on the chest to manually pump the heart and restore normal rhythm. But I will need to modify the technique for Zephyrian anatomy." "Doctor." Velthara stared at her. "You want to press on his chest? Like some kind of primitive beating?" "It is not beating," Lisa said firmly. "It is precise pressure applied at specific points to stimulate the heart's natural rhythm. But I need to understand his anatomy better first." She placed her hands on the professor's chest again, this time pressing gently to feel the exact position of both hearts. The Zephyrian cardiovascular system was more complex than human anatomy, with the two hearts positioned at different angles and depths. "The primary heart is here," she said, placing her right hand over the correct spot. "And the secondary heart is here." She positioned her left hand over the second heart. "I need to compress them in the right sequence to get them synchronized again." "This is madness," said Professor Zendal. "You are talking about manually manipulating his hearts with your hands." "It is not manipulation," Lisa said. "It is guidance. The hearts want to beat normally. They just need help remembering how." Professor Keffer's body convulsed again, and this time his secondary heart also stopped for a moment. The emergency scanner's alarms became even louder. "Both hearts showing signs of failure," reported Riksdahl. "If this continues, he will die within minutes." Lisa looked at Dr. Velthara. Please let me try. Your methods are not working, and we are running out of time. Dr. Velthara hesitated. Everything in her training told her that this human approach was wrong, dangerous, and primitive. But the emergency scanner was showing that Professor Keffer was dying, and none of their advanced treatments were helping. If you make his condition worse, ... she began. He is already dying, Lisa said. I cannot make it worse. Dr. Velthara nodded reluctantly. Do it. Lisa positioned her hands carefully over both of the professor's hearts. She had never tried this technique on a Zephyrian before, but the basic principles should be the same. She needed to provide external pressure to stimulate the hearts and help them find their natural rhythm again. I am going to compress the primary heart first, she announced, then the secondary heart. I need to time it exactly right. She pressed down firmly on the professor's chest, directly over his primary heart. The Zephyrian's crystalline skin was harder than human skin, so she had to use more pressure than she would on a human patient. She felt the heart compress beneath, her hands forcing blood through the vessels. Primary heart responding, reported Rixto, watching the scanner. I am seeing electrical activity. Lisa moved to the secondary heart and applied pressure there. The timing was crucial. She needed to compress each heart at the right moment to restore their natural coordination. Secondary heart is also responding, Rixdal said with surprise in his voice, but Lisa was not finished. She could feel through her hands that the hearts were still not working together properly. The primary heart was trying to beat, but it was still out of sync with the secondary heart. I need to help them find their rhythm, she said. She began a pattern of compressions, alternating between the two hearts in the sequence that felt right. It was not something she could explain logically. It was instinct based on what her hands were telling her. The other students and professors watched in amazement as Lisa worked. Her technique looked strange and primitive compared to their advanced medical technology, but the emergency scanner was showing that it was working. Both hearts are showing improved electrical activity, reported Rixdell. The rhythms are becoming more regular. Lisa continued her compressions, gradually reducing the pressure as she felt the hearts begin to work together. It was like conducting an orchestra, helping two instruments find harmony after they had been playing out of tune. Synchronization improving, announced another student who was monitoring the scanner. Primary heart is maintaining steady rhythm. Suddenly, Lisa felt a change beneath her hands. Both hearts were now beating in perfect coordination, the way they were supposed to. The primary heart was handling systemic circulation while the secondary heart managed pulmonary function, just as Professor Keffer had been explaining in his lecture. Both hearts are functioning normally, Rixdal said, his voice filled with wonder. All readings are returning to normal parameters. Lisa sat back on her heels, exhausted. Her hands were shaking from the precise work she had been doing, but she felt a surge of satisfaction. It had worked. The technique she had adapted from human medicine had saved the professor's life. Professor Keffer's skin began to regain its normal color, and his breathing became deeper and more regular. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked around the room with confusion. What happened? He asked weakly. Dr. Velthara stared at Lisa with an expression of complete shock. The human student saved your life, she said quietly, using methods that we did not understand. Professor Keffer tried to sit up, but Lisa gently pushed him back down. You need to rest, she said. Your hearts are working normally now, but you should not strain them. My hearts? The professor asked. What was wrong with my hearts? Lisa looked at Dr. Velthara, unsure if she should explain. The older Zephyrian nodded slowly. You suffer from what humans call commotio cordis, Lisa said. Something hit your chest at exactly the wrong moment and disrupted your heart's electrical signals. Your technology could not fix it because it was not physical damage. It was a timing problem. Professor Keffer stared at her. And you fixed it by ... pressing on my chest? I helped your hearts remember how to work together, Lisa said. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The room was completely silent. Every student and professor was staring at Lisa with new respect. She had done something that their advanced medical technology could not do. She had saved a life using nothing but her hands and her knowledge of human medicine. Nixar was the first to speak. "That was incredible," she said. "I have never seen anything like it." Dr. Velthar looked at Lisa with an expression that might have been admiration. "Miss Martinez," she said slowly, "perhaps we have been too quick to dismiss human medical methods." Lisa smiled, feeling proud but also humble. She had proven that human medicine had value, but she had also learned how much she still had to discover about alien physiology. This was just the beginning. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Lisa sat in the large lecture hall with 200 other students, listening to Professor Keffer explain the complex workings of the Zephyrian cardiovascular system. The professor stood at the center of the room, his tall frame commanding attention as holographic images of beating hearts floated around him. "As you can see," Professor Keffer said, pointing to a three-dimensional model of a Zephyrian heart, "our dual heart system allows for much more efficient blood flow than single heart species. The primary heart handles systemic circulation, while the secondary heart manages pulmonary function." Lisa took notes, still amazed by how different Zephyrian anatomy was from human anatomy. Their two hearts worked together like a perfectly tuned machine, each one smaller than a human heart but more efficient. She had been studying their cardiovascular system for weeks now, and she was finally starting to understand how it worked. "The beauty of our system," the professor continued, "is that if one heart fails, the other can compensate temporarily. This is why cardiac emergencies are so rare among our people. Our hearts are designed to support each other." A student in the front row raised her hand. "Professor, what happens if both hearts fail at the same time?" Professor Keffer smiled. "An excellent question, Zalmira. Dual heart failure is extremely rare. In fact, in my 40 years of practice, I have only seen 3 cases. The odds are approximately 1 in 50 million. Lisa was writing down these numbers when she noticed something strange. Professor Keffer had stopped talking mid-sentence. He was standing perfectly still, staring at the holographic heart in front of him with a confused expression on his face. "Professor?" Zalmira asked. "Are you feeling well?" Professor Keffer opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he pressed his hand against his chest and took a step backward. His usually bright skin was starting to fade, becoming more transparent than usual. "I feel ... the professor began, then stopped. His large silver eyes rolled back, and his knees buckled. Lisa watched in horror as the most respected professor in the academy collapsed onto the floor. His body hit the ground with a sound like breaking glass, and his skin began to flicker between bright and dim. For a moment, nobody moved. The entire lecture hall was silent, except for the humming of the holographic projectors. Then chaos erupted. "Get help!" someone shouted in Zephyrian. Students began running toward the exits, their voices mixing together in a sound like wind chimes in a storm. 3 students who were studying to be doctors rushed to the professor's side. Lisa watched as they pulled out their diagnostic scanners and began running them over his body. The devices beeped and flashed, but the students looked confused. "The readings are not making sense," said one of them, a tall male named Rickstall. "His primary heart is showing irregular rhythms, but the secondary heart appears normal." "Use the emergency medical scanner," suggested another student. "Maybe our devices are not sensitive enough." Lisa stood up and moved closer to where the professor lay. She could see that his breathing was shallow and fast, and his skin was getting paler by the second. Something about the way he was lying bothered her, but she could not put her finger on what it was. More students arrived with emergency medical equipment. They brought a large scanning device that looked like a metal table and carefully moved Professor Keffer onto it. The machine immediately began displaying complex readings on floating screens around the room. Primary heart function is at 60% and dropping, announced the student who was reading the displays. Secondary heart is maintaining normal rhythm, but showing signs of stress. Dr. Velthara burst into the room, followed by two other professors. She immediately took charge of the situation, pushing students aside to get to the scanning equipment. "What is his condition?" she demanded. "Dual cardiac distress," reported Rickstoll. "Primary heart is failing, but the secondary heart is still functioning. We cannot determine the cause." Dr. Velthara frowned as she studied the readings. "This is highly unusual. Professor Keffer is young and healthy. There should be no reason for cardiac failure." She began working with the emergency equipment, trying different scanning modes and treatment protocols. Other professors arrived and joined the effort, but Lisa could see the confusion on their faces. Their advanced technology was telling them what was happening, but not why it was happening. "We need to get him to the main hospital," Dr. Velthara announced. "The equipment here is not sufficient for this type of emergency." "I have called for an emergency transport," said Professor Zendal. "It should arrive within 20 minutes. 20 minutes seemed like a very long time to Lisa. She watched as Professor Keffer's condition continued to worsen. His breathing became more labored, and his skin was now so pale that she could see the outline of his organs beneath. The professors worked frantically with their equipment, trying different treatments and medications. Nothing seemed to help. If anything, the professor's condition was getting worse. "His secondary heart is starting to show signs of failure as well," reported one of the professors. "If we lose both hearts, we will not be able to save him." Lisa found herself moving closer to the professor, studying his face and the way his body was positioned. Something was nagging at her, a feeling that she had seen something like this before. But where? Then it hit her. During her medical training on Earth, she had seen a video of a young athlete who had collapsed during a basketball game. The athlete had been hit in the chest by a basketball at exactly the wrong moment, causing his heart to stop. The condition was called commotio cordis, and it was extremely rare, but that was in humans with single hearts. Could something similar happen to a Zephyrian with dual hearts? Lisa looked at the professor's chest and noticed something that the scanners had missed. There was a small mark on his crystalline skin, right between where his two hearts would be. It was barely visible, but it looked like he might have been hit by something. "Excuse me," Lisa said, approaching Dr. Velthara. "I think I might know what happened." Dr. Velthara barely looked at her. "Miss Martinez, this is not the time for human guesswork. We need real medical solutions." "But I think he might have been hit in the chest," Lisa persisted. "There is a mark on his skin, and the way he collapsed reminds me of something I learned about in human medicine." "Hit in the chest?" Dr. Velthara looked irritated. "Miss Martinez, a simple impact could not cause this kind of cardiac failure. Our hearts are much more protected than human hearts." Lisa wanted to argue, but she knew it would not help. The professors continued their work, running more scans and trying different treatments. But nothing was working, and Professor Keffer's condition continued to deteriorate. "The transport is delayed," Professor Zendal announced. "There is a severe storm moving through the area. They cannot fly in these conditions." Double quotes. Dr. Velthara's face went pale. "How long?" "At least an hour, maybe 2. Lisa looked at Professor Keffer's fading form and made a decision. She might be wrong, and she might get in terrible trouble, but she could not just stand there and watch him die. She had to try something, even if it seemed primitive to the others. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Dr. Velthara, please. Let me try something. I know you think human medicine is primitive, but I have an idea that might help." Dr. Velthara turned to look at her, anger flashing in her silver eyes. "Miss Martinez, you are a student. You have no authority to treat patients, especially not with human methods." "But he is dying," Lisa said simply. "Your advanced methods are not working. What do you have to lose?" The room fell silent. Every eye was on Lisa, and she could feel the weight of their stares. She was asking them to trust her, a primitive human, with the life of their most respected professor. Dr. Velthara looked at the readings on the emergency scanner. Both of Professor Keffer's hearts were now showing signs of failure. Whatever was happening to him, their technology could not fix it. 1 hour, she said finally. If the transport cannot get here for an hour, he will be dead before then anyway. Lisa nodded and knelt beside the professor. She was about to attempt something that had never been tried before, using human techniques on an alien patient. She just hoped she was right about what was wrong with him. The fate of Professor Keffer, and possibly her entire future at the academy, now rested in her hands. Lisa's second week at the academy was harder than her first. Every class seemed designed to remind her that human medicine was old and simple compared to what the Zephyrians could do. In advanced surgical techniques, she watched as other students learned to heal cuts by pointing devices at them and watching the skin grow back together in seconds. In molecular medicine, they studied how to fix broken bones by telling the body's cells to rebuild themselves. Professor Keffer was not the only teacher who made comments about human methods. Dr. Velthara, who ran the emergency medicine department, was even worse. She was an older Zephyrian with dark blue skin and eyes that seemed to look right through Lisa. During her first class, she had made Lisa stand up and explain how humans stop bleeding. "We apply pressure to the wound," Lisa had said, feeling foolish as she spoke. "We use bandages and sometimes stitches to close cuts." The other students had made soft musical sounds that Lisa learned was Zephyrian laughter. Dr. Velthara had shaken her head slowly. "How wonderfully primitive," she had said. "Here we simply tell the blood vessels to close themselves. Much cleaner, much faster, much more civilized." Lisa sat in her room that evening, staring at her notes from the day. Everything seemed impossible to learn. The Zephyrians had machines that could see inside a body and fix problems without ever cutting the skin. They had medicines that could make a broken heart grow new parts. They could cure diseases that killed millions of humans by simply pointing a light at the sick person. Her communication device chimed, and Jake Thompson's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but he smiled when he saw her. "How are the studies going?" he asked. "I failed my first major test," Lisa said, not wanting to lie to him. It was on proper molecular healing protocols. "I got 60% of the questions wrong," Jake frowned. "What happened?" "They showed us a patient with internal bleeding. Everyone else wrote about using molecular regeneration and cellular reconstruction. I wrote about emergency surgery and blood transfusions." Lisa felt her eyes getting wet. "The professor wrote Stone Age methods on my paper." "Lisa," Jake said gently, "you are learning a new way of medicine. It will take time, but do not forget what you know. Human medicine works. It has saved millions of lives. But their way is so much better," Lisa said. "They can fix things we cannot even see. They can cure diseases in minutes that take us months to treat." "Maybe," Jake said. "But what happens when their machines break? What happens when they face something their technology cannot handle? That is when the old ways matter." After the call ended, Lisa tried to study, but the words on her screen blurred together. She was so tired of feeling stupid, tired of being the primitive human who did not understand advanced medicine. The next morning brought another disaster. In practical diagnosis class, students were supposed to examine holographic patients and identify their problems using Zephyrian scanning tools. Lisa's patient was a young Zephyrian with chest pain. The other students moved their scanning devices over the hologram and quickly identified the problem. Lisa tried to do the same, but she also found herself looking at the way the patient was, breathing, and the color of his skin. Something seemed wrong, but the scanner showed normal readings. "What is your diagnosis?" asked Professor Zendel, the class instructor. "The scanner shows normal cardiac function," Lisa said. "But I think there might be something wrong with his breathing pattern." "The scanner is never wrong," said Quinto, a student who always seemed to know the right answers. If it shows normal readings, the patient is fine. But look at how he is breathing, Lisa insisted. See how he is holding his chest? And his skin color seems off. Professor Zendo looked at the hologram and then at his own scanner. The device shows no problems. Miss Martinez, you cannot diagnose patients by looking at them. That is guesswork, not medicine. Lisa felt her face turn red as the other students laughed. She wanted to argue, but she knew it would only make things worse. She sat down and tried to focus on the next patient, but she could not stop thinking about the breathing pattern she had noticed. Later that day, Lisa found herself in the Academy's library, a vast space filled with floating books and holographic displays. She was trying to study for her next test when Nixara sat down beside her. You looked upset in class today, Nixara said. I am starting to think I do not belong here, Lisa admitted. Everything I know about medicine seems wrong. Tell me about human diagnosis, Nixara said. How do you find out what is wrong with a patient? Lisa thought for a moment. We look at them. We listen to their heart and lungs. We feel their skin. To check for fever, we ask them questions about their pain. We use our hands and our eyes and our experience. That sounds very personal, Nixara said. Here we let the machines do all of that. But machines cannot see everything, Lisa said. Sometimes you have to use your instincts. Nixara was quiet for a moment. I have been thinking about what? You said in class today, about the patient's breathing. I looked up his case file later. He had a rare condition that the scanners sometimes miss. You were right. Lisa stared at her. What? The patient had a small air pocket in his chest that was hard to detect. The way he was breathing was exactly how someone with that condition would breathe. The scanners missed it because it was so small, but your eyes caught it. Lisa felt a strange mix of pride and confusion. Why did not you say anything in class? Because I was not sure, Nixara said. And because Professor Zendo does not like it when students question the scanners. But now I am thinking that maybe human methods are not as primitive as we thought. That evening, Lisa called Jake again. She told him about the diagnosis and about what Nixara had discovered. That is exactly what I was talking about, Jake said, looking excited. Your training taught you to observe patients, not just scan them. That is a skill that cannot be replaced by machines. But everyone here thinks it is worthless, Lisa said. Not everyone, Jake reminded her. Nixara noticed the value in what you did. Maybe others will too, if you keep showing them. The next few days were a little easier. Lisa started to notice that while the Zephyrian students were very good at using their technology, they sometimes missed things that seemed obvious to her. In one class, a holographic patient was clearly in pain, but the students focused only on their scanner readings and ignored the patient's facial expressions. Lisa began to raise her hand more often in class, asking questions that her classmates had not thought of. She would point out things she noticed about patients that the machines had not detected. Some professors dismissed her observations, but a few seemed interested. Dr. Velfara, however, was not one of them. During a particularly difficult class, on emergency procedures, she called Lisa to the front of the room. Miss Martinez, she said, perhaps you can show us how humans handle a cardiac emergency. Lisa knew this was meant to embarrass her, but she decided to answer honestly. We check for a pulse and breathing. If the heart has stopped, we do chest compressions to keep blood flowing to the brain. We breathe air into the patient's lungs. We use electric shocks to restart the heart if necessary. The class was silent. Dr. Velthara shook her head slowly. How barbaric, she said. Pressing on someone's chest like an animal. Here we simply use cellular regeneration to repair the heart instantly. But what if the regeneration machines are broken? Lisa asked. What if there is no power? What if you are somewhere without technology? Dr. Velthara's eyes narrowed. Such situations do not occur in civilized society, Miss Martinez. We have moved beyond such primitive concerns. But Lisa noticed that some students were looking thoughtful. Nixar was nodding slightly, and even Quintal seemed to be considering her words. That night, Lisa studied harder than ever. She was determined to prove that human medicine had value, even in a world of advanced technology. She did not know that very soon she would have the chance to show everyone exactly what human methods could do. She was about to learn that sometimes the old ways were not just useful, but necessary. Lisa Martinez stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive building in front of her. The Zephyrian Medical Academy stretched high into the purple sky of Zephyr Prime, its crystal walls gleaming in the light of twin suns. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, ever since she first heard that the Academy might accept a human student. Now she was here, and her stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. The other students walked past her in groups. They're tall, crystalline bodies catching the sunlight. The Zephyrians were beautiful in a way that made Lisa feel small and ordinary. They had pale, see-through skin that showed the gentle glow of their organs beneath. Their eyes were large and silver, and they moved with a grace that Lisa could never match. Most of them stood at least 7 feet tall, making Lisa's 5'6" frame look tiny in comparison. She picked up her single bag and walked toward the main entrance. The other students gave her strange looks as she passed. Some whispered too, each other in their musical language, their voices like wind chimes in a soft breeze. Lisa did not need to understand their words to know they were talking about her. She was the only human in a school of 2,000 aliens. The inside of the academy was even more impressive than the outside. The walls were made of the same crystal material, but they glowed with a soft blue light. Floating platforms carried students between different levels, and holographic displays showed complex medical diagrams in the air. Lisa had studied hard to prepare for this, but seeing it all in person made her realize how different this world was from Earth. A tall Zephyrian approached her at the information desk. His name tag reads Student Guide Zixtel. He looked down at Lisa with what might have been curiosity or concern. "You must be the human student," he said in perfect English, though his accent made the words sound like music. "I am here to show you to your room and give you your schedule." Lisa nodded and followed him through the corridors. Other students stared as they passed. Some looked interested, others seemed worried or confused. One group of students stopped talking completely when they saw her, their silver eyes following her movement down the hall. "Many students have never seen a human before," Zixtel explained as they walked. "Your species is known to us, but you are the first to study here. There's much curiosity about your abilities." They reached a small room with a single bed, a desk, and a window that looked out over the academy grounds. The furniture was sized for Zephyrians, making everything look too big for Lisa. She put her bag on the bed and turned to face her guide. "Classes begin tomorrow," Zixtel said, handing her a small crystal device. "This will translate our language and show you your schedule. Your first class is Advanced Physiology with Professor Ketfer." Lisa had heard that name before. Professor Ketfer was famous throughout the galaxy for his work on cardiovascular systems. He had written textbooks that were used on dozens of planets. The thought of learning from him made Lisa excited and nervous at the same time. "Thank you," she said to Zixtel. "Can I ask you something? What do the other students think about me being here?" Zixtel paused for a moment, his large eyes studying her face. "Many are curious. Some are worried. Human medicine is very different from ours. We use advanced technology to heal, while humans use more basic methods. Some students wonder if you can keep up with our studies." After Zixtel left, Lisa sat on her bed and looked out the window. The academy grounds were filled with students walking between buildings, all of them tall and graceful and nothing like her. She thought about her mentor back on Earth, Jake Thompson, who had helped her prepare for this moment. He had warned her it would be difficult, but she had not expected to feel so alone. The next morning, Lisa woke up early and made her way to the dining hall. The food was strange but edible, mostly liquids and soft substances that the Zephyrians seemed to absorb rather than chew. She sat alone at a table, watching the other students eat and talk among themselves. A female Zephyrian named Nyxara sat down across from her. She was smaller than most of the others, probably only 6.5 feet tall, with skin that had a slight green tint. "You are the human student," Nyxara said. It was not a question. "Yes, I am Lisa Martinez," Lisa replied, grateful for any conversation. "I am Nyxara. I study emergency medicine. I wanted to meet you because I am curious about human medical practices. Is it true that humans cut open bodies with metal tools?" Lisa almost smiled. "We call it surgery, and yes, we do use surgical instruments. But we also use many other methods to help people heal." "Fascinating," Nyxara said. "Here we use molecular regeneration and energy healing. Physical cutting seems very primitive." The word stung, but Lisa tried not to show it. Different methods. Work for different species, I suppose. After breakfast, Lisa made her way to her first class. The classroom was a large circular room with seats arranged in rising circles around a central platform. Lisa found a seat in the middle section, hoping not to draw too much attention. The other students filed in, and she noticed that many of them looked in her direction. Professor Keffer entered the room, and Lisa immediately understood why he was so respected. He was taller than the other Zephyrians, with skin that seemed to glow brighter than the rest. His presence filled the room, and all conversation stopped when he began to speak. "Welcome to Advanced Physiology," he said, his voice carrying easily through the large space. "In this class, we will study the complex systems that keep living beings alive. We will focus on the most advanced healing techniques known to our civilization." He paused and looked directly at Lisa. "I understand we have a human student with us this year. This is interesting, as human medicine is still in its early stages compared to our methods. Humans still rely on crude techniques that we abandoned centuries ago." Lisa felt her cheeks burn red. Around her, other students turned to look at her. Some seemed embarrassed for her, others looked curious about how she would respond. "Human medicine relies heavily on physical manipulation of the body," Professor Keffer continued. "They cut, they stitch, they use chemicals to force healing. It is, frankly, barbaric compared to our ability to heal at the molecular level." Lisa wanted to say something, to defend her people's medical knowledge, but she knew it would only make things worse. She was here to learn, not to argue with one of the most respected professors in the galaxy. "However," the professor added, "I am curious to see how a human mind approaches our advanced concepts. Perhaps there is something to be learned from such a different perspective." The class continued with a discussion of Zephyrian anatomy and their multiple organ systems. Lisa took notes and tried to follow along, but she could feel the eyes of other students on her throughout the lesson. When class ended, she gathered her things quickly and headed for the door. As she walked through the corridors, Lisa heard whispers following her. Words like primitive and barbaric echoed in her mind. She had expected this to be difficult, but she had not expected to feel so small and unwelcome. That night, Lisa called Jake Thompson on Earth. His familiar face appeared on her communication screen, and she felt a little better seeing someone from home. "How was your first day?" he asked. "Challenging," Lisa admitted. "The professor called human medicine barbaric in front of the entire class." Jake nodded. "I expected something like that. Remember, you are there to prove that human medicine has value. Show them what we can do, not just what we cannot do." Lisa nodded, feeling a bit of her determination return. She was here for a reason. She would show them that human medicine was not primitive or barbaric. She would prove that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. She did not know that very soon she would have the chance to do exactly that. Amy woke up before dawn on the day of the second trial. She had not slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she thought about the shadow worm she would have to face. Lisa had tried to find out more about the creature, but the Zephyrians would only say that it was fast, deadly, and very hard to catch. She dressed in the hunting clothes they had given her. The material felt strange against her skin, like it was alive. When she moved, the clothes moved with her, making no sound at all. Captain Sullivan was waiting for her in the hallway. "Amy, I want you to know that I've been watching the palace. Guards, if something goes wrong during this trial, we'll get you out of here." "Thank you, Jake," Amy said. "But I have to do this. If I run away now, it will ruin any chance for peace between our peoples." Her father joined them as they walked toward the trial chamber. "Sweetheart, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're already brave enough just by being here." Amy hugged him. "I know, Dad, but I love Kale, and I want to be worthy of him." The trial chamber was different from the truth room. This one was huge, with walls that rose up into darkness above. The floor was covered with soft dirt and strange plants that glowed with their own light. It looked like a forest, but one that had grown inside a building high. Priestess Velandra was waiting with several other Zephyrians. She held a long spear made of silver metal and a net woven from what looked like spider silk. "Dr. Carter," Velandra sighed, "this is the trial of strength. Somewhere in this chamber is a shadow worm. It is a predator that has been hunting in our forest for thousands of years. You must capture it alive using only these traditional weapons." Amy took the spear and net. The spear was heavier than she expected, but it felt well balanced in her hands. The net was so light it seemed to float. "How will I know when I've found it?" Amy asked. "You will know," Velandra said. "The shadow worm will find you first. You have until sunset to complete the trial. If you fail, the creature will be sedated and removed, but you will not be allowed to try again." Amy nodded. She understood. This was her only chance. The Zephyrians left the chamber, and Amy was alone. She stood very still and listened. The forest around her was quiet except for the soft sounds of wind moving through the glowing plants. She could hear water dripping somewhere in the distance. Amy had always been good at solving problems. When she was a child, she had loved puzzles and games that required thinking. As a scientist, she had learned to observe carefully and look for patterns. Now, she tried to think like a hunter. First, she needed to understand her enemy. The shadow worm could become invisible, which meant it probably hunted by surprise. It had claws that could cut through metal, so it was strong and dangerous. But it was also a living creature, which meant it had to eat, sleep, and follow certain patterns. Amy began to explore the chamber. She moved slowly and quietly, using her eyes and ears to learn about the environment. She found a small stream running through the forest. Near the water, she saw strange tracks in the soft mud. They looked like the footprints of a large cat, but with longer claws. She followed the tracks until they disappeared at a rocky area. Amy knelt down and studied the rocks. Some of them had scratch marks, as if something with sharp claws had climbed over them. She was getting closer. Hours passed. Amy found more signs of the shadow worm. Claw marks on trees, strange smells in certain areas, and places where the ground had been disturbed. She began to understand the creature's territory and habits, but she had not actually seen the shadow worm yet, and she was starting to worry. The light in the chamber was getting dimmer, which meant the day was passing. She needed to find the creature soon. That's when Amy had an idea. Instead of trying to hunt the shadow worm, what if she made it come to her? She was thinking like a human, not like a Zephyrian. Humans were good at setting traps and using tricks. Amy found a clearing near the stream where she had seen the most tracks. She gathered some of the glowing plants and arranged them in a circle. Then she sat in the middle and began to make noise. Not loud noise, but the kind of sounds that might attract a curious predator. She waited. The forest around her was silent. Then Amy heard it. A soft sound like breathing, but coming from different directions. The shadow worm was circling her, trying to decide if she was dangerous or just prey. Amy closed her eyes and listened carefully. She could hear the creature moving through the plants, getting closer. She gripped her spear tighter, but tried to look relaxed and unaware. Suddenly, the air in front of her shimmered. The shadow worm was becoming visible. Amy saw a creature about the size of a large dog, with blue-black fur and eyes that glowed like stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The shadow worm crouched low, ready to spring. Amy waited until it was in the air, jumping toward her. Then she rolled to the side and threw her net. The net caught the creature in mid-jump. The shadow worm struggled and snarled, but the net held. Amy quickly grabbed her spear and pointed it at the creature, being careful not to hurt it. "Got you," she whispered. The shadow worm stopped struggling and looked at her. For a moment, Amy felt like it was studying her, trying to understand what kind of creature she was. The chamber doors opened and the Zephyrians came back in. They looked shocked when they saw Amy standing over the captured shadow worm. "Impossible," one of them whispered. "No one has ever caught a shadow worm on their first try." High Priestess Relandra walked over to examine the net. "How did you do this, Dr. Carter?" "Most Zephyrians take many attempts to learn how to hunt these creatures." Amy smiled. "I didn't hunt it. I made it come to me. Humans are good at thinking of new ways to solve old problems." Relandra looked puzzled. "You did not follow the traditional hunting methods." "No," Amy said. "I used human methods. I studied the creature's behavior, found its territory, and set a trap. It worked better than chasing it around the forest." The Zephyrians whispered among themselves. Amy could hear surprise and concern in their voices. "This is not how the trial is supposed to work," one of them said. "But she completed the task." Another replied. "She captured the shadow worm alive, as required." Relandra nodded slowly. "You have passed the trial, Dr. Carter, but your methods were ... unusual. The Queen Mother will want to hear about this." As they released the shadow worm back into its forest home, Amy felt proud of herself. She had faced a dangerous creature and won, not through violence, but through intelligence and planning. That evening, Kale came to visit her. He looked amazed and worried at the same time. "Amy, the whole palace is talking about what you did today. No one has ever completed the trial of strength in such a way. You have impressed many people, but you have also concerned others." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "Some of the council members think that humans are too unpredictable. They worry that if you think so differently from us, how can you truly become part of our royal family?" Amy felt a chill. "And what do you think?" Kale took her hands. "I think you are exactly what our people need. You show us new ways to solve problems. But Amy, the final trial will be the hardest. And I fear that the Queen Mother is planning to make it even more difficult because of what you did today." Outside the window, the palace walls were showing swirling patterns of light and dark. Change was coming, and Amy was not sure she was ready for it.